Normalmente isto é feito pensando que os 8 primeiros estarão carros com performances semelhantes. Uma corrida destas é natural que não se esperasse que os carros da divisão inferior fossem aqueles que partiam nas primeiras posições. Já temos aqui os nossos comentadores os jogos virão e é o homem que acompanha a nova campanha.
Hello, welcome back to Vila in Portugal, ready for the second race of the European Touring Car Cup, which will get underway in just under 10 minutes' time because we had a safety car in race one. The race went longer than its planned time duration, and the time period between the two races to allow for car fixing, fueling, tyring, and for the drivers to have either take on or get rid of excess liquids has meant that the start has now been delayed. So we're inside the final 15 minutes building up to the start of our second race. Top 8 from race 1 reversed on the grid, which means the first 3 cars are all Super 1600s. The race got underway after one aborted start with the green and black car of Norbert Nagy on pole and leading away from local driver Manuel Pedro Fernandez. Fernandez just beaten in qualifying by the young Hungarian in a qualifying session that was littered with crashed cars. First time ever for almost all these drivers on any kind of street circuit. They managed to keep their cars nicely off the barriers. Pressure was on Nagy right from the beginning from Fernandez. He had a couple of good runs going on the Hungarian. Despite getting an overlap a couple of times, never actually managed to get his nose in front, but not for want of trying. And it does indicate perhaps there might be potential for some good racing later on through the day. In a Super 1600 class, while the champion and points leader Nicolas Maxin cleared off, Thomas Corrini battled with Andreas Rinke. Corrini got by and then left Rinke behind him to chase the second place car of Kevin Hilgenhöfel. Fabio Motta, the local driver, had a good dice with Peter Foulin and then overcooked it down towards the end of the lap, slammed into the wall, wrecked the left front corner. We wait to see whether he will make the grid. Brief safety car ensued, allowing Chris Richard to catch the field after a drive-through penalty for reversing on the grid. And then the end of the race for Norbert Nagy. Penultimate lap coming towards the end of lap 12 of 13. The car ran out of road down the hill and he was behind. And when he came into the pits, the answer was evident. There was no pressure in the left front tyre. And so it was an open goal for Manuel Pedro Fernandez. Like Portugal the night before, it happened at the last minute, but he did claim victory. Very popular start to the day with the local fans. Nicolas Maxin winning the Super 1600 class in a race that pays double points, as will race 2. That means that Fernandez, on his first appearance in the championship, scores 24 points because he qualified second on the grid as well. And he is now up to joint 5th in the standings from a standing start. So 7 races in, 1 race by Fernandez, and he is tied on points with season-long contender Chris Johannes Schreiber. Schreiber one of a couple of cars that pulled off with mechanical failures, and again Schreiber's car out on the circuit when the race finished may not have made it back in time to be fixed. We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. So Harry Folkard, the Super 1600 cars at the front. Put yourself in Thomas Corriney's position here. He's got a chance to win his class because he was third, the guy who was second is behind, the guy who was first is behind. So he wants to make a good start, but on the other hand, he's going to be aware that much quicker cars are going to be chomping at the bit to try and get by. How's he going to deal with that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? I mean, I'm actually surprised that they've allowed this to kind of happen this way, because, you know, there's a big disparity between the speed of the 1600s and the TCR spec cars. So I think basically what he'll do, he'll come off the line, get as good a start as he can, and he'll probably stick to one side of the track and leave as much room for the faster cars to get around him. You know, there's no point in him getting in anybody's way. But he'll also want to try and make sure that there's maybe the back end of the TCR spec cars, maybe get one or two between him as they go through the first couple of corners between him and his rivals, and then should give him a bit of breathing space to try and scamper off a little bit and build a bit of a buffer fairly early on, and use that, because you look at the actual on-track advantage that he has in distance from him to his rivals. It's quite a long way,
yeah.
And he wants to make something of that, but he also doesn't want to get in these guys' ways or cause an accident or cause himself to be taken off.
Well, yeah, get tangled up with a faster car taking him out, exactly. But yeah, he's got plenty of experience for a 16-year-old. Won't be 17 until October, so goodness me, yeah, a lot of pressure on young shoulders. You just saw the red car of Chris Richard. He will be the first of the Super 2000 cars with his Honda Civic. Mladen Lalazic, who was just in front of him at the flag, will be the second Super 1600 car, and they start fourth and fifth on the grid being cleared now, and they're inside the Honda of Peter Rickley. So we have one of the youngest drivers in the field, Thomas Corriney, on pole. Peter Rickley, the oldest, at 47 years old, 21 years his senior, and more than old enough to be his dad. But Peter Rickley doesn't seem to have lost any of his competitive urge, not just racing, but running his own now two-car team of brand new Honda Civics. And then Peter Foulin in his Seat Leon, he will line up in 7th position. He's our points leader. Peter Foulin with an 18-point score so far. Normally the points are 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the top 8 drivers, but with double points, the winner got 20 points, and that was Fernandez, and Peter Foulin got 16 points for his second place. Here is our race 1 winner. And Manuel Pedro Fernandez will definitely be looking to try and carve his way back through the field. He's only got, was it 1, 2, 3, 4 Super 2000 cars in front of him, so the chances of a big score for him again are high. Andres Rinke behind them. He will start in 9th position, another Super 1600 car. And then behind him will be the blue and yellow car of Ksenia Nix, or should be. We're going to now try from the back of the grid and spot some of the gaps. Take the sun or take the shade, take your choice. Not much shade in the grandstands, but they're still pretty busy. Here is Ksenia Nix, so she is there. And there's a couple of cars that ducked into the pit lane at the end of the, towards the end of the race. Behind, okay, so 83 is on the grid. That's Daniel Neiman behind Ksenia Nix, so you can see him on the grid. There's a few vantage points around this track, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. There's people hanging off walls and everything all over the place.
Okay, so right at the back, yellow and black car, Fabio Motta, he is definitely there. Norbert Nagy is here because he only had a puncture, he didn't have mechanical damage, so he is on the grid. And behind him, oh wow, Christian Hannes Schreiber, they have got him A, back to the pits, and B, whatever ailed the car, they've got it fixed as well in time, so he is on the grid. So Fabio Motta's car there at the back, that has been fixed after the clang with the wall, so it looks like it was only maybe broken suspension, or maybe even it was just a suspension arm and a broken wheel or something that prevented him from driving it back into the pit lane.
It looked like it had a lot of positive camber on it, so it's probably, you know, bent an arm or bent a wishbone or something, but as long as it hasn't done the front subframe, then that should be okay. And to be honest, even if it has, they might as well try and get the thing out and try and get some points.
Yes, because there are enough cars that he can actually score points, even if he's 2 or 3 laps down. Won't make much difference. 15-second board being given to our European Touring Car Cup grid here, live from Villarreal on Eurosport. This is the second of our 2 races, and just to remind you, top 8 from race 1's finishing order are reversed on the race 2 grid, as used to be case in World Touring Cars. That means that we have 3 Super 1600 cars leading the field away. The pole man is the 16-year-old from the Czech Republic, Thomas Koreny, in his white Ford Fiesta. Kevin Hilgenhöfel lies second on the grid in his Peugeot 207, and Nicholas Maxin, the points leader, the reigning champion, will start third in his Ford Fiesta. Then the faster Super 2000 cars, and you just saw towards the back of the grid, Christian Schreiber and Fabio Motta in their Super 2000 cars, both of which had mechanical problems earlier on in the race, and Norbert Nagy is back there as well. So Koreny, Hilgenhöfel and Maxin, Super 1600 cars, and then the turbocharged 2-litre cars, Richard, Lalazic, Rickley, Foulin and Fernandez, the top 5 in that class in the first race. Manuel Pedro Fernandez making his first European Touring Car Cup start. He's racing in the Portuguese TCR Championship, so he's familiar with the Seat Leon, doesn't know the track though. And then further back, Norbert Nagy and Christian Schreiber and Fabio Motta all failed to finish the first race. Nagy with a puncher, Motta with a crash, and Schreiber's car pulled off and stopped halfway around the penultimate lap, or 2 or 3 laps from home in fact. So it looks like they are all good to go, and they'll be carving their way past the Fiestas and the Peugeots. And you know, that's a moderately easy pass on this track, as long as you catch them, Harry Volkart, in the right place.
Yeah, but the other thing, these cars have got so much more grip as well, so they should be able to go around the outside of them with relative ease. They're a lot faster, they've got a lot more grip, they should be able to kind of make something stick. And like we said before, you know, the 1600 cars aren't going to want to get in the way of these guys. They're in a separate race. So.
The drama there might come if you commit yourself to going around the outside and the Super 1600 car moves offline to let you through on the inside, but we'll have to wait and see how that works. '16-year-old pole sitter Thomas Koreny from the Czech Republic leads the field round here in Portugal, Villarreal, for the second race of the European Touring Car Cup. First ever race on a street circuit anywhere for the European Touring Car Cup, and in the present iteration of the European Touring Car Series, certainly their first street race. Last time a European Championship for touring cars raced on a street circuit was probably either Pau in the south of France in the Pyrenees, or maybe the old street circuit at Brno in the Czech Republic. That would have been back in the 1980s. So this is a real venture into the unknown because of the potential costs of damage in the street circuit. This has also been racked up for a double point race. Might almost have said maybe that would be a good idea for the Nordschleifer as well, to compensate for the fact that you are possibly going to do some serious damage to the car. That was certainly the case for Ulrike Kraft, one of our front runners. She was in fact vying with Nicholas Maxin for the Super 1600 lead again this year, as she did last year. And she had a big crash on the Nordschleifer, which has wrecked her car and certainly knocked the wind out of her sails.
This could be a great opportunity for Chris Richard to turn what looked like a pretty, potentially disappointing weekend after a drive-through penalty in race 1. He's on the front row, effectively on the front row of the grid here, and
yeah.
he could definitely turn this into a Honda win, and having not had the best pace all weekend, that would be an ideal result for his championship hopes, because second in the championship, he needs to close the gap on Peter Fullen, and this is a good opportunity.
Fabio Motta, the final car on the grid as we get ready for race 2 of the European Touring Car Cup here in Villarreal. Loads and loads of Portuguese support for Manuel Pedro Fernandez, our race 1 winner. Standing start for race 2 with the Fiesta and the Peugeot on the front row of the grid. 5-second board has been given. The red lights will come on, the revs will rise, and then watch how the faster Super 2000 cars from behind try and get by. Rotten start from Mladen Lalazic. He's been passed by 2 or 3 cars, and already the Hondas have gone 1-2, and they have split the Super 1600 cars. So the white car of Thomas Koreny doing his very best to stay out of the way as all the Super 2000 cars come around, and he was drifting out a little wide to the barriers there, the white Fiesta. Nicholas Maxin with the Technicolor yawn on the bonnet and the roof is up into second place. He got ahead of that blue car of Kevin Hilgenhöfel, the Peugeot 207. And all the Super 2000 cars are through, and Fernandez, our race one winner, in 5th and trying to come around the outside of Mladen Lalazic, and now on the inside. I think he might make that stick. He's got an inside line up here as well, and it looks as though there's going to be a change for 4th position. It's a Honda 1-2. No, Lalazic finally finds enough pace to hold off Fernandez, and right behind Fernandez now is Norbert Naj, the man that the Portuguese followed almost all the way to the checkered flag. Naj led every lap but the last one in race one when he picked up a puncture. Whether that was from curb strikes or some debris in the track, hard to tell, but Naj has gone by Lalazic, so too has Fernandez. Lalazic in the number 17 car, which is badly damaged. His own car is not racing. This is the team's spare car. And it looks as though he has got a problem right from the start. Yeah, everybody's gone straight by him, except for Fabio Motta, who will dispose of him here, because it does look like the car was slow off the corner. Seems to have got speed now, but I wonder if there's something wrong with his throttle mapping.
Chris Richard looks to be making good his escape as well. He's managed to put a bit of gap between himself and his teammate in the other Honda.
Yeah, and he's leaving Peter Rickley here to deal with Peter Foulin, who is the championship leader. Now, unfortunately, because of the double point situation, Chris Richard actually lost quite a lot of ground to Peter Foulin. Chris Richard scored 8 points in race one, Foulin 16, plus 2 points extra for qualifying 3rd on the grid, because it's normally 3-2-1 for the top 3, but there's double points for that as well. So Foulin had an 18-point race, and Richard, his closest rival, an 8-point race. So the gap's gone out from 4 to 14 points. So Richard must win this to try and level some of that again, and he needs Peter Rickley to hold off Peter Foulin as well. The problem is, Hondas were nearly 3 seconds a lap slower in qualifying. Now, it may well have been that they were just making sure they didn't hit the barriers and damage the cars, and they may have slightly better race pace now they're more familiar with the circuit, but Richard has got to escape, Harry, you're absolutely right.
He seems to be doing a good job so far, but I'm sure that won't be missed on Rickley either. Obviously, Peter Rickley owns the team. Yeah. He'll be very keen to make sure that he gets a win for the team, so he'll be doing his utmost to hold back Peter Foulin and try and stack the odds in Richard's favour. And
Rickley's still 3rd in the championship as well. He got a 12-point score out of the weekend, so far. So in fact, he's closed the gap on his teammate as they're 2nd and 3rd. But you're absolutely right. He will do whatever he can to make sure that Peter Foulin, who's right behind him, has to deal with Manuel Pedro Fernandez, and that could be a saving grace as well for Peter Rickley in that red Honda. If Fernandez in the red, white and black Seat starts to attack, as it looks like he's doing immediately, well, you can see the gap already. Peter Foulin is suddenly starting to watch his mirrors, and he's dropped off the back of Peter Rickley's red Honda.
Yeah, straight away you can't afford not to defend, or at least have a mindful eye on what's going on behind you, because if you're trying too hard to attack Rickley, then you're going to leave a door open somewhere and open it.
Whoa, Rickley really defensive there, got a big wriggle on, coming that fast left-hander down the hill. And that is really, really quick. They're motoring on 145, nearly 150 miles an hour there. Well over 240 kilometres an hour as they come over the brow and down towards that braking area. Well, again, Foulin's having a little run, but as you say, look at Fernandez. He's just waiting for an opportunity to pounce, isn't he?
Yeah, this is normally when you see this sort of desperation, because, you know, Foulin and Fernandez will be seeing Richard disappear in the distance. They need to make this move stick as soon as possible before he gets too much clean air between them.
Mladen Lalazic in the grey car, behind him Fabio Motta. That was the battle for 7th. And Fernandez with the fastest first sector of anybody on the beginning of the last lap. And that's why he closed right up on Peter Foulin. And then their pace is being dictated by Peter Rickley, but Rickley's doing exactly what he should do. He's basically putting the car in the middle of the road and making no room on the inside, no room on the outside.
Yeah, drive on the white line on the inside. Yeah. If they want to come around the outside, then that's up to them on their bravery.
Well, handily here, there are white lines all the way down the middle of the road. So basically, if you stick on the centre, middle lane, then you're doing all right. And there are only 2 or 3 places where realistically somebody's going to get a good run at you, and he knows where those chicanes are located. So along here, this is, you know, single lane racetrack. You can't get by there. Down here, this is an overtaking opportunity still, but you have to have so much more speed coming into shot there, and when you're stuck behind somebody, you just can't get that extra advantage.
You also have to have a bit of grace from the guy you're trying to overtake and hope that he doesn't just slam the door on you and push you over the big blue curve.
Well, the problem is, if you do try and slam the door on somebody who's got an inside overlap, he's going to come flying over you no matter what happens. So, you know, if you allow that move down the inside, you have to concede the corner very, very early for either of you to survive.
Yeah.
And Rickley was making sure that the door was firmly shut. You don't want to leave a bathroom window open when you're in that situation. Foulin doesn't make it through the chicane, so he has to straight line it and rejoin behind. So wisely not trying to take advantage. If he'd snicked it down a gear and floored it, of course he would have come out in front. Oh, that's Thomas Corrini, who was the Super 1600 class leader. Oh no! And he did get tagged by Hilgenhöfel, and through goes Nicholas Makshin, who now leads the class, surely. And that was a little replay of the incident behind them, and they're the leaders, or the second place battle at that chicane. That's the turn 12, 11, 12, 13 chicane.
Richard will be hoping, Chris Richard will be hoping and praying with everything he's got that the safety car doesn't come out now. Now he's managed to build up a bit of a gap.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
He's 4.4 seconds ahead, but if the safety car comes out, that's going to be gone.
Now, my hypothesis about qualifying, his qualifying lap, 207.89, he's just set a 206.6 in the race. So clearly they were bedding themselves in. I don't think Chris Richard, at 21 years old, has got much street racing experience, and clearly was very aware that if he was too much of a hero in free practice or qualifying, he could easily end up with a ball of scrap and no race points. So he was obviously then playing himself in, giving it everything plenty of leeway, and now he's done another full race. He's got another 13 laps under his belt after qualifying. Now he's got more of a feel for the track, and he's going 1.2 seconds quicker than he managed at all in qualifying. So he's flying. Rickley in very deep there, and there's a chance, but again, you can't get a run there. You know, that's sort of a motorcycle block pass, and Fernandez dare not go through there because he went all the way around the outside. Stewards will look at that incident between Kevin Hilgenhöfel and Thomas Corrini. Corrini got turned around, Hilgenhöfel continued in second, and it was just a racing error. It was a mistake under braking, but unfortunately he did tag Corrini out of the race, or out of second place, or out of lead in fact. So
yeah, he was locked up from miles back, wasn't he? He was trying to stop it, but unfortunately he wasn't able to, and caused the incident. So
I sense a drive through, because if you ruin somebody else's race, whether by design or accident, generally the stewards feel duty bound to ruin yours, I'm afraid. I think that Hilgenhöfel will get a drive through, and that will move Corrini back up the order, but in fact he is last in Super 1600, so he's gone from first to last from somebody else's mistake. Well, there is the distance between Chris Richard now and Peter Rickley, and the deal now is the guys chasing Rickley, all they can see is Rickley's Honda. They now have no part on the track probably when they're seeing the car in front, so
yeah,
they're now feeling really bottled up, and here comes Fernandez.
He's pulled 3 seconds on that last lap due to that incident where he outbraked himself.
Fernandez in the red, white and black in 4th position. This is the battle for 3rd. Drive-through has been announced for car 88, and that is Kevin Hilgenhöfel. So the youngster in the Peugeot got it wrong, under braking, down into turn 6, ran just into the back of the leader of the class, who was already halfway turned through the chicane, couldn't avoid Thomas Corrini, or didn't have the presence of mind to steer left and avoid him and go up the escape road. And the closing distance was just not enough for him to get away with it. So Hilgenhöfel gets a drive-through penalty. Corrini is last, and it's an open goal for Nicholas Makshin. Andreas Rinke, who's second in the championship, will move up to second in the race. It's a really tough break, I'm afraid, for Thomas Corrini. In trouble.
Peter
Cars everywhere. Peter Foulin got in again like he did the last lap. Far too deep, couldn't sort it out, and they fanned out like the red arrows, and around they went.
I think he might be interesting to see what happens with that, but he might, look, he's conceding the position there, I think.
Yeah, but Foulin gave it back, so Rickley's back in front, but Foulin's now got Christian Schreiber, his own teammate, inside and making a run around the outside, and Norbert Nudge is there. Christian Schreiber does not get through.
It's also released Fernandez as well, so he's now in the hunt for Chris Richard.
Well, we need to have a little look at that and see whether Fernandez used the racing circuit to get by, or whether the stewards will decree that he had nowhere to go but around the outside. You know, with Rickley sideways at the apex, it did kind of rule out going straight up the middle, because then you'd be causing an avoidable accident. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, potentially, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Chris Richard again improving on his previous best, and again setting the fastest lap of the race.
And now he needs to, because Fernandez is coming, and Richard needs to win this. Second will not help, because Fernandez will take the points, because he is scoring championship points. He's not invisible. So Peter Rickley in third place now rather than second, still holding off Peter Foulin. And actually for Richard, this has got better, because Foulin was third, is now down to fourth, and Fernandez is up into second, who's not as close a rival as Foulin.
Yeah.
But if Fernandez finishes in second place, he will be a very close rival, and that might actually entice him to come and do the remaining races of the championship, because he'll suddenly be sort of in the top 3 or 4. I don't know what his budget is or anything else. There's 2 more race weekends at Magny-Cours and at Imola.
Oh, here we go.
Again, Peter Foulin under pressure from Chris-Johannes Schreiber. Now they're run by the same team, and it's Foulin's organisation, but you know, Schreiber's got his own fish to fry.
I think he might have been allowed, not allowed through, but I don't think he fought him too hard there. There will be a definite understanding of the championship.
Yeah, but Schreiber wasn't in front of him. He got alongside, but then Foulin got him, kept his nose in front. But Schreiber was having another run there. Now Fabio Motta trying to come around. No, there's a Super 1600 car in the way, and Mladen Lalazic there thought, right, this isn't going to play well, and I'm going to hit the brakes and make sure I survive. Motta can do whatever he likes. I think that was probably quite sensible stuff by Lalazic.
Yeah, definitely. Fairly mature driving there.
Yeah. Yes. There's going to be an accident. Somebody needs to prevent it. The guy in the Super 1600 car can't, so I'm going to get out of this while I've got the opportunity to, rather than sitting beside the road going, oh, I should have braked earlier. Well, it doesn't seem that the stewards are worried as they go around. Ksenia are worried about Fernandez making it through into second place. Oh, Norbert Nash deep down there, and Fabio Motta right out by the wall that claimed him in race 1, going around that Fiesta. And who was that? That was Daniel Neerman, who had to pit in race 1. Cheering on Fernandez in second place, the big Portuguese crowd, and it's not just, there's not a spare seat in the place, but there's not a spare balcony, a spare bit of wire fencing, a spare overhang anywhere that's not packed with fans. That's one of the joys of street circuits. I mean, when we raced in Porto, some of the balconies almost literally were overhanging the circuit, and people were building scaffolding ganches in their front gardens and all sorts.
Now, interestingly, Chris Richard on that previous, the lap, not the lap just gone, the prior one to that, he did a 2:06.3. The lap just gone, his last lap, he did a 2:08.1. And Fernandez also did a 2:08.3, so they've dropped off to the tune of 2 seconds in one lap. But it's also affecting Fernandez, so I don't know, maybe there could just be tyre degradation, the tyres probably just got to its point, or maybe it's a little bit of excitement.
Well, the incident involving cars 12 and 22 will be investigated by the stewards. That's Peter Rickley and Peter Foulin. And so they're not looking at Fernandez then?
I didn't see
for
how.
why, Keats, for why? I think we need to see a replay of that incident again at the chicane here a couple of laps ago.
Oh, is that Foulin there?
No. That is Chris-Johannes Schreiber. Don't forget, his car packed up under him in race 1, and that looks like an absolute repeat in race 2. The car has just gone bleh, hasn't it? It's come off the corner, and his foot's gone to the, onto the floor on the pedal, but there's no one home under the bonnet. And he pulled off just here, didn't he, in that little lay-by.
Yeah,
and he's going to stop at exactly the same place, isn't he? That's where he's going to do. He's going to roll down the hill exactly the same as in race 1. Now, talk about frustration. That's not 2 race positions lost, that's 4, because it's double points. That's a massive hit to Chris-Johannes Schreiber. Came in here in 5th position. He's already been eased down to joint 6th by Fernandez, or with Fernandez. And Fernandez now, on his first race weekend, will be in front. Well, there is Chris Richard leading, 2:07.5 last time round, but 2:06.7 by Fernandez. He's brought the gap down under 10 seconds for the first time. And Fernandez was the quickest man in race 1. and is currently the second quickest man in race 2, because Peter Foulin, unleashed in third place, is just at a 2:06.2, fastest race lap for our points leader. Here we go, Peter Rickley under braking. Well, he did get tagged in the end, didn't he, by Peter Foulin and Fernandez. Does Fernandez have anywhere to go, Harry, realistically? Actually, yes, he could have got round. He stops here, watch the third car, could have driven behind them, straight line the chicane.
Yeah.
There should be definitely an investigation over that, but there is a drive-through for Peter Foulin. Drive-through penalty for causing a collision for championship leader Peter Foulin. Well, a little hard to argue. I would, I don't know. The car in front was in all sorts of trouble and was going slower than perhaps would be expected. There is Christian Schreiber at the side of the road, pulled off exactly where he stopped in the first race. Here's our race leader, Chris Richard.
Chris Richard's front split is flapping around there quite a lot.
So he's thumped a curb really hard, and you can see it, you can hear it as well. It's flapping like a sheet in a gale. There's our Super 1600 leader, Nicholas Makshin, 8th place overall. So Peter Foulin, fastest race lap, championship leader, extended his advantage over Chris Richard in race 1. Now with a drive-through penalty. Now don't forget, Richard had a drive-through in race 1 for reversing in the pit lane before they went to the grid, but a safety car helped mitigate against that, and he's got to get by Andreas Rinke, second in Super 1600, and does. It's a bit breathless stuff suddenly, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
It's been good, close racing. Okay, Richard has been out front, but we've had this good battle behind. And I don't know, if you're going to penalise Foulin because...
It's difficult
because Rickley was slow and offline and out of control, and Foulin had nowhere to go, then you absolutely should be penalising Fernandez for going the long way around the chicane, because he'd slowed down to such an extent that actually he could have driven through the chicane cleanly and didn't bother.
Yeah, he basically saw that something was going off to the right, thought, yeah, I'll go that way and hopefully it'll all pan out.
Well, he tried to avoid what he thought was going to be 2 cars stationary. So, yes, justification there, but in the end, 2 cars weren't stationary. Norbert Madge drove through the chicane, who was behind him, so he had a little more room, but in front of him, Peter Rickley managed to get through.
Fernandez is now absolutely eating Chris Richards' lap times up. He's 3 seconds alone on that last lap faster than Richard was.
He's gone down from 9 to 5.9 seconds in that last lap. So Chris Richard, with that damaged splitter, it must sound awful, it must feel awful, it's probably not handling very well either, but Richard must stay in front. He has got to take 20 points for the win here if he can, because Peter Foulin, having done his drive-through, is in 6th position, and he only needs 1 more retirement before he is still scoring more points. In fact, even if no one retires, because he qualified higher, Peter Foulin will score more points than Chris Richard should Fernandez win the second race. By the way, if Fernandez wins the second race, gets another 20 points, he will have 44 points. He will be 4th in the championship, which is an indication of how important the points are here.
It's quite impressive from a one-off round to end up 4th in the championship halfway through the season.
If you could join in when it's really worth the money. Fabio Motta in the yellow and black Seat Leon, chasing Norbert Madge. This is for the final podium spot. Madge, of course, led all the way, almost to the flag. He led the full 11 lap race distance, but there were 13 laps, because 2 of the laps under a safety car. He led 12 laps, almost 12 laps, and then at the end of lap 12, picked up a puncture and had to pull into the pits. So
Fernandez now dropped that over 10-second gap to 3.4
wow,
seconds.
a 2:05.7. Fernandez in qualifying at a 2:05.4. That's how quickly he's going, and that is the leader, and there is the second place man behind him.
It's going to be too little too late.
And that's Peter Rickley.
Yeah, Rickley's pulled off.
He's pulled off, so there was damage to the Honda. I was wondering why he had dropped so far down. So he's pulled off, Christian Schreiber has pulled off, Stefanowski didn't start, Corrini got nerfed out. And this is the battle for the podium, Norbert Madge. And if he doesn't end up on the podium here, that'll be really, really tough on him, because he should have had victory. Norbert Naj should have won his first race in the ETC Cup in race 1. Down the hill into turn 6. And that chicane has been the scene of a few incidents, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those ones that we said earlier on. You've got to have the gratis of the guy you're trying to overtake to allow you to go up the inside there. And you know, if he drives a bit of a wide car, which is pretty much that's what we saw with Wrigley. He was sat in the middle of the road, which he has every right to do so. And then Fulham probably got a little bit frustrated and penned up behind him, and a little bit optimistic on the brakes, and just give him a little tap, and that's all it takes to send someone round.
Well, the gap between 3rd and 4th is about a whole car length, maybe 1.5 cars length. There's your race leader, Chris Richard. Where's Fernandez? He should have been in shot there. Is he still there? Is he still there? Yes, he is, but does that look like 3 seconds? Has that gap grown a little, maybe? He set a personal best 2nd sector, so better than any that he's set so far. But the first part of the lap was not as quick for Fernandez. I wonder whether, with the really high ambient temperature, I wonder whether he has just overextended his tyres.
Yeah.
1 lap to go, 1 lap separating Chris Richard from the checkered flag. 4.8 kilometres more he must lead here in Villarreal to claim what will be his 4th win of the season, and a 20-point haul to bring him right back into championship contention. Peter Foulin, after his drive-through, has just set fastest lap, and there is the lead gap. Richard got held up by the Super 1600 car there slightly, didn't he? Because that's not a 3.6 gap, which it was at the line.
2:04.9 Foulin's just set there. That's the fastest lap of the weekend.
Yes, it is. 2:05.0 Norbert Naj, that was pole, so Foulin flying now, fuming. You can probably imagine his feeling inside the helmet, Harry.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's pretty angry in there.
Yeah. And, you know, if we look at that incident again after the race with Peter Wrigley down here, Wrigley was out of shape, got sideways. Foulin had nowhere to go. Foulin didn't have him off, didn't make him go sideways, made him go more sideways, but Wrigley was struggling at that stage. I think that might be just a bit of a tough penalty. However, last lap, Chris Richard needs to have whatever life he's got left in the tyres of that Honda at his disposal now, because what was 3.6 is now down to 0.6 of a second in half a lap. Here comes Fernandez looking for a home win. Behind him, Motta looking for a home podium after crashing out of race 1, and Motta's got a really good run going on Naj. But I think the Hungarian has got him under control here, down into 11, 12 and 13. Oh, and there's another potential fly in the ointment for Chris Richard. There's another Super 1600 car. Senior Nix is in front. Here comes the battle for 3rd. Peter Foulin again flying. 2:04.9, another phenomenal lap from Foulin out of our sight. But for victory, here comes Chris Richard. He's got to shut the door, and he does. Richard wins. The Swiss flag and the checkered flag fly. Fernandez in 2nd. A win and a 2nd place for Fernandez in the weekend. And Norbert Naj is on the podium. Well done to him. Should have won the first race here. A puncture denied him. And Nicholas Maxin, double victory in Super 1600. So Peter Wrigley's Swiss team very happy indeed. The boss parked out on the circuit somewhere with a damaged car. But their young superstar Chris Richard claims his 4th win of the season. So let's do a little bit of maths. He had 52 points, he's now got 72 points. And Peter Foulin in 6th position. Talk amongst yourselves. 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3 is 6 points to add to his 66. He's got 72. They are tied at the top of the championship, I believe. So, wow, entertaining racing. Both of our championship contenders, Peter Foulin and Chris Richard, with slightly harsh drive-through penalties, although I'm sure Mirik, our race director, will argue that they were entirely justified.
I think Wrigley is a bit of an unspoken and unseen hero in this, because he basically created that win for Chris Richard. If the gap at the end was 0.3 of a second from over 10 seconds, and if he hadn't defended so hard, then there's no way that Chris Richard would have won that. Which, you know, that's what having a teammate's all about, really. It's kind of using your team to the advantages that you might have.
Yeah, let the boy go and let him try and get a win. And Peter Rickley did a really good job. In the end, his car just couldn't quite hold off his rivals. Andres Rinke, second in Super 1600. Kevin Hilgenhöfel, after his drive-through, ended up in third. Chris Richard passes the abandoned car of compatriot Christiane Schreiber. There are a lot of happy Swiss at the Rickley Motorsport team. Peter Rickley out around the back of the circuit somewhere. I'm sure he was out of the car and waving on his teammate in the lead on the last lap when he saw how close Fernandez was behind him. As Fernandez just 3 laps, he took 10 seconds out of Richard, and that's, you know, Richard pushed early, used his tyres up then. Fernandez was bottled up in a queue, didn't make any rash moves, and then he used his tyres, catching the leader, and by that stage they were both, I would imagine, a pretty much similar layer of tyre wear. Given another 2 or 3 laps, would Fernandez have got by? Who knows? Who knows?
As I say, isn't it? It's so hard to overtake around here, and Chris Richard could have driven a wider car like his teammate did, and that would have been, he would have been fairly safe, I think.
Exactly right. So, a win in a second for Manuel Pedro Fernandez in the 2 races here, and Chris Richard taking victory in the second. That's his 4th win of the European Touring Car Cup season. And for our Super 1600 winner, Nicholas Maxin, that is wins number 5 and 6 here, and he also got points for pole, so his championship lead has increased enormously over the weekend. Lunch getting ready to be served somewhere. Very nice indeed, as we complete our European Touring Car Cup adventure for the first time ever on a street circuit here around the streets of Vila in northern Portugal. And we had a Portuguese winner in race 1. We got a Swiss winner in race 2. Chris Richard now tied for the lead of the championship with Peter Rickley. And Rickley will feel hard done by. Not Peter Rickley, Peter Foulin rather. Foulin will feel hard done by. He had a slight overlap on Peter Rickley going down to the chicane in turn 6. Rickley still tried to turn in. And we'd already said, if somebody gets an overlap on you there, neither of you are going to make it through in one piece. You have to concede the corner if you allow them to get alongside. However, there's the happy Chris Richard, our joint championship leader, as they head next time out to Magny-Cours in mid-July.
Länge hat es nicht mehr. Was ein Helmet nehmen? Noch nicht mehr nachschauen.